How's everybody doing tonight? Welcome to Cup of Joe with Joe, episode 24. I am currently working. uh, okay, so looks like we are still having a little bit of trouble with regards to. There we go. We got that one. Now we got to get back to fixing the other one. So give me a moment here. Do the virtual background check. Do the blitz off. Do the blitz on. And we are back. There we go, folks. Love you guys. I love you all. So tonight we got a couple interesting topics. One of the things that was interesting going on. Oh, pay no attention, right? Yep, that is. Yeah. Behind the green screen. Who knew back in the Emerald City it was about the green screen? We're back there again these days. And yes, Aloha snack bar. Um, so one of the things I wanted to go ahead and get covered today. Now there was a big to do July 1st. Okay, that was 2 weeks ago. The Indiana Star came out with a story shortly after the Supreme Court ruling on Roe versus Wade. Now the thing was the Supreme Court ruling went into effect immediately in the state of Ohio. Okay, there was no wait period, no 30 days, none of this. It was Roe versus Wade, the ruling on Dobbs came out, boom, it was done. Law went into effect. Now, the big to do was because the Indiana Star, which was across the river from Ohio, released a story about a 10-year-old girl that was being denied an abortion and actually had to travel across state lines in order to accomplish this. Now, the reason why this is so important is because at the time there were an awful lot of social conservatives going, story's bogus, didn't happen, not real, you know, that sort of thing wouldn't happen on our state. That doesn't happen in Ohio. Yeah, it's slam job. It's an attack on our police. It's an attack on our judges. It's an attack on, going down this entire list of, they're here to shame us and keep us from doing the things that, we as conservative value, social conservatives, value the sanctity of life. This, we're not doing this because, well, turns out that all of those denials that this story actually happened were wrong. Okay. NPR came out and did a breakdown on the story. And this one's particularly interesting because as you follow the pathology of everything that goes on. Um, and yeah, Mike, you're absolutely right. Clearly illustrated when half the people believed it was the worst possible example, and the other half truly believed it was fake. Okay. Got no problem with it, you know. Of course, I don't have any problem with that. Anybody who's involved with, a 10-year-old girl, yeah. Anyway, so getting into the details of the story, June 22nd. Okay, this was the day that the mother became aware that her 10-year-old daughter was being molested and abused. She filed a report with the police. She took her child in order to have the child, you know, start the investigation process for her 10-year-old daughter with the child abuse organization. They're in Ohio. Yeah. Um, Thanks, James. Appreciate it. Okay. June 22nd. Okay. June 22nd. This abuse clinic where she took her daughter in to start the rape kit, the investigation, the process. They filed with the Ohio police. I'm not sure which police department, Dayton, I think. Okay, so they filed with the Dayton police on June 22nd. Okay, they immediately petitioned the judge for the abortion so that this young girl could get her abortion in Ohio. Fortunately, by the time the judge was available to hear the case, all of the preceding clinic work that needed to be done so that the judge can make a decision determined that because the pregnancy was at 6 weeks and 3 days, she couldn't get the abortion in Ohio. Okay. 10-year-old girl doesn't understand that she could have gotten pregnant from what was happening to her, is now pregnant, at 6 days or 6 weeks, 3 days is beyond the period in which this 6-week limit, according to the Ohio anti-abortion law, goes into effect. So June 30th, she jumps the river. She goes across the river with family, gets the abortion done, and the Indiana Star leaks this story. And it's like Mike was saying, half of us were believing the worst. This was the worst possible outcome of a law like we saw in Ohio. The other half were going, nah, it's sensationalized. It's BS. Never going to happen. Didn't happen. Single story background, yada, 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 whatever. Okay. July 13th, earlier today, the Ohio police arrested and at the bail hearing, a 27-year-old man was arrested. Oh yeah, he faces life, probably a very short life. Based on stories of what I hear about what happens in prison. Especially with regards to that. But yes, there's a 27-year-old man who's been arraigned. He is on his bail was set for $2 million. In the process of having the investigation, it was determined it wasn't just once. He admitted to officers twice. There were 2 incidences, again, resulting in the pregnancy. So, I mean, literally, this case is the worst case scenario that we've all imagined, that we've all dreaded, coming back from Roe versus Wade. and it hit all the milestones of being why many of these laws are so wrong. Okay. 6 weeks. Denied the abortion because she was at 6 weeks, 3 days. She had to leave state. Um, right, Mike, one of these, okay, should be silent. Okay. Except for reasonable clinical requirements. I know there are several states that have managed to push abortion clinics out of the state simply by making unreasonable demands on clinical situations. But yeah, it is literally a social moral issue, and it's not a social moral issue for the people. Okay. Let's understand that right now. This is not a social or moral issue for the people. This is a social moral issue for the individual in question. In this case, what does a 10-year-old girl want to do with a baby of a 27-year-old man that's now sitting in her uterus? What do her parents want to see done? Yeah, Sandy. I don't even want to postulate. Uh, there are some indications that cultural values are part of what led to this, led to thinking, led to this man thinking that this was acceptable. And this is another discussion that's actually interesting. The reason why is because he is an immigrant. I believe he's a refugee. That's who the 2 million, that's, oh, yeah, she could have died. The judge that said, up 6 weeks, 3 days, can't do it. She's going to have the kid, forced. Yeah, she could have died. She could have died in childbirth. There, she could have died at any point along the way because of complications because she's 10. Okay. And like Mike said, this is not an issue for the people. This is not an issue for the community, even. This is an issue for the individuals involved. This is an individual for the child. This is an individual. This is an issue for the parents of the child. Because of the variety, because of the variations that can be associated with this. I hope he gets more than that, Sandy. I really do. He's been given $2 million bail. He will be facing life in prison because of what's happened here. And it's going to be real interesting, some of the other implications that come out of this case. Reason why is because, well, Ohio doesn't have, yeah, we can get into what ifs. Not going to do that today. Okay, we understand that this is a horrific situation. And the fact that this extremely horrific situation came so quickly after Roe versus Wade was overturned, after the Dobbs ruling came out, after judges, physicians, doctors, pediatricians, are already moving to determine how they're going to behave, how they're going to react, what their rulings are going to be, whether or not they're going to provide specific kind of services. And it's like literally we already got this coming out. Now in the state of Idaho, we have our trigger law. Right now, our AG, Lawrence Wasden, will not be putting our trigger laws into effect until August 18th. Reason why is that's 30 days after the July 17th, when the Dobbs ruling is certified by the courts. Okay. 35 days from the certification. Not the releasing of the ruling, but the certification of the ruling. So Idaho, we still have about 40 days. I think we got 45 days. We have about 45 days. And August 3rd, Idaho will actually be having the Supreme Court of Idaho hearing whether or not Idaho's anti-abortion laws are legal within terms of the Idaho Constitution. What's the constitutionality? What's based on the Idaho Constitution? Uh, and no, Sandy, that's part of the problem. She's not the only little girl this is happening to. Okay. 10, 12, 11, or 10, 11, 12, 13. I mean, these girls preteens, 14. Okay. They don't even track pregnancies under 15 years old in the United States. World Health Organization, the CDC, does not track teen pregnancies under the age of 15. Okay. We don't know how many of these under 15 have abortions because of it. The statistics aren't published. And anybody who works with nurses in maternity wards, has family with nurses in maternity wards, doctors in maternity wards, once a year, sometimes more often, there's the horror story. The 10-year-old, the 11-year-old, 12-year-old who's in the delivery room. It's a reality. It happens often enough here in the Treasure Valley. Our hospitals here in Caldwell, Nampa, Boise, almost all of them have experiences with these extremely young children who are pregnant, who are and for whatever reason, their families don't want them to have the abortion. Otherwise, historically, they would have been able to get them. They can still get them here in the state of Idaho for the next 40 days. Okay. Yet we still have young girls carrying to term having these children. And again, as Mike points out, this is about family values, moral values, social values. This is the decision of the girl. This is the decision of the families. An awful lot of us will look at it and go, a 10-year-old having children, that is insane. That is obtuse. That is wrong on so many levels. Again, not our decision. But the problem is we've created laws that deny the choice, that deny the option of these young children being able to do it. That one's interesting there. I think Mike brings up the issue. Challenging on constitutionality is a losing proposition. The Republicans in Idaho are theocratic radicals who react purely in extreme opposition to Democrat positions. Mike, you're not wrong, which is unfortunate. And it's one of those things we will continue to see the Idaho legislature, those people who write our laws in the state, continue to press, religious moralistic values on, try and put them on the books, try and press the people into participating in their religion via legislation, render unto Caesar and separation of church and state and all of that fun stuff. Ooh, yeah. This one's actually an interesting one, Mike. And a lot of this has to do with the initial rage, the initial anger. We have an organization here in the state of Idaho, here in the Treasure Valley, and it's like practically the day the leak came out. And again, the day of the ruling, we had an organization that was out on the steps that had attracted a crowd and was doing the shout your abortion and making a scene, doing all the bloody grunt stuff. And how do you give people the opportunity to express their rage? How do you give people the opportunity to get beyond their trauma, to get beyond their disappointment, to get beyond their rage, give them the opportunity to express it, and then be able to come back around and say, okay, now that you got that out of your system, what can we do that's productive? What can we do that's not intentionally out to offend our theocratic neighbors? What can we do to bring them back around? This is one of those things that comes back to the idea of individual bodily autonomy, full spectrum bodily autonomy. The idea that, not just abortion, but your choice in medicine. Do you or do you not want to get vaxxed? Do you or do you not want the ability to use ivermectin? Do you or do you not want a mandate regarding the wearing of masks? Do you or do you not want to recognize the potential that not only does overturning Roe versus Wade create the opportunity for the denial of abortions, but it creates the potential for the full spectrum denial of reproductive rights? That we could literally have a state one day that says you can't have kids. Seen China do it. The one child rule. No more than one child. Of course, we're watching them come back around on that. The reason why is because one child isn't enough to take care of two parents. The Ponzi scheme that is the United States Social Security insurance program. You know, individual rights and privileges must come with decorum and discretion if we're all going to expect respect from everyone. Okay. Not flaunting a potentially offensive position. Okay. One of those things that's interesting about what went on with Black Lives Matter 2 years ago. Okay. Everything that we were talking about, everything that were the heroes. The idea that, George Floyd had a right to live. There were other Black Americans that had been killed at the hands of police, who had far better records, who had a greater justification for continuation of life. Now, you're right. George Floyd did not deserve to die the way he did. He did not deserve to die, due to negligence of a police officer. He did not deserve, yet he was the one who became the focal point. And because of his history, because of his background, he became a very poor martyr for the cause because he was so easily disrespected by the right. James, no, James, you don't get it. You don't get it. One child for city kids, no limits for farmers and those that produce food for the nation. Yeah, dude. No, we can't go there. That isn't freedom. That isn't choice. That isn't reproductive rights. That isn't full bodily autonomy. That is still ceding to the state the power over reproduction. That is still ceding to the state the right to choose who can and cannot have children. Okay? Can't do that, James. I know there's a lot of people who want to, believe me. I know there's a lot of people who want to. Okay, but back to this issue, Mike, here. Okay. During the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Huey P. Newton, The Black Panthers on the steps. Yeah, you're right. Breonna Taylor would have been, much better as the martyr, much better as the symbol. She was a first responder. She had history. She was a mother. She was a woman. She was, had honors. Had a record of good deeds. Okay. Let's get back to this, to the civil rights movement. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., Huey P. Newton, Black Panthers in Oakland with their Second Amendment demonstration on the Capitol steps before Reagan signed the Mulford Act. Okay. What was different about their efforts? Everybody got dressed up. Everybody went down in their Sunday best. Everybody presented that social conservative, that idea that, yes, I could be sitting in the pew next to you at church. Yes, I do speak with intention. I do speak with knowledge. I do speak, and I'm able to communicate. And that's it. Huey and Malcolm, in the way they presented themselves, either through Nation of Islam, Martin Luther King, Baptist minister, effective, intimidating, courteous. Now, this is interesting. Reason why is because when it comes to respect, when it comes to civility, let's talk about civility. Civility is the language of the oppressor. It is the oppressor saying to you, you must speak to me the way I want to hear you speak in order to be recognized. A lot of us find offense at that. It's not who we are. That's not the way we were raised. That's not how we grew up. What we now have is someone with privilege telling someone without that they must learn a new language, a new dialect, to even be allowed to speak to them about their miscarriages of justice, about their inappropriate legislations, about their abuses of the institutions of the United States that we've trusted them with. Civility. It's an interesting argument, James. I may even return to that here in a little bit. Okay. And Mike, you're absolutely right. We need to speak to the language of the audience we have, not the one we want. Now, that's saying there's more than one audience out there right now. We have a social conservative audience. We have a lower class, working class audience. We have students that have been raised in the American educational institution that are part of this movement, that are part of this conversation, that's part of this conversation about what is happening in America right now. Okay. One of the things that we need to talk about. I know an awful lot of people right now, they're mad. This is about women's rights. This is about half of the population of the United States does not give a damn about women's rights. They don't. They don't give a damn And even a larger portion of that doesn't give a damn about trans rights, LGBTQ rights. They're alienating their children because their children are identifying because of the social media awareness that, hey, maybe girls liking girls isn't such a bad thing, or boys liking boys. Well, it's not, folks. It's not a bad thing. And yet, you still got mothers and fathers that want their kids to have kids. They want to be grandparents. They want to be grandma and grandpa. They want the traditions they grew up with. How do we talk? How do we bridge the barriers? How do we create communication between the generations, between the cultures, between the cultural lenses? As long as she's not 10, Sandy. As long as she's not 10. Sorry. That was a bad joke. This is about going through. We need to have this conversation. We need to have it in a way that can be respected by the people who are primary opposition. Not necessarily the hardliners, not necessarily the ones that cannot be reasoned with, but the ones who were offended by the initial gestures made by these organizations, the initial rage, the people who were offended by the initial rage. What can we do to change the messaging so that they understand why we're angry, why we're upset, that certain rights are no longer universally protected, why certain rights are open to, different interpretations based on where in the United States you live. Why don't we open up that conversation and say, bodily autonomy, regardless of sex, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of income, class, sexual identity, sexual preference. How do we go to people and say, regardless of any of those, I have the inalienable right to decide for myself how to live my life. Not medical choice, held by the government. Not reproductive choice, held by the government. Not your right to ownership of property based on government decree. Point. It's up to my children if they have children. Unless you're there, unless you are capable of supporting your children, having children, the idea of demanding that your children have children for you is just a tad preposterous. Yet here we are, letting the state tell Americans that they must have children for the state. Domestic supply of infants, folks. Right? Antinatalists, voluntary antinatalists, the right to not have children if they don't want to. It is a right. That is part of reproductive rights, the right to not have children, the right to have your own children, the right to be a gestational carrier for someone else's children. These are all reproductive rights. These are all reproductive choices. These are all choices that the individual should be able to make, absent coercion of the state, absent coercion of the community, absent coercion of family. Oh God, the moral majority. God, what was her name? Clinton's VP's wife. The whole idea, you had Democrats coming out against free speech. You had Democrats coming out. You had Dee Snider, holding, being primary witness about freedom of speech, because of, the moral majority getting in and saying, we're going to censor music. We're going to censor video games. We're going to censor, this, that, the other. Tipper Gore. Yes, Tipper Gore. Tipper Gore, the moral majority of the 1980s, a Democrat's wife, came out in favor of music censorship, video game censorship, tried to get Dungeons and Dragons banned. God, you remember those days? Dungeons and Dragons, the work of the devil. No, it's actually more than that, Sandy. It is. We talk about the need for laborers, but without children to keep the Ponzi scheme going, the Social Security insurance program, the debt continues to grow. A child born today is born into debt, $66,000. And no matter how hard they work, the government's still spending more, spending them further and further into debt. Doesn't matter how hard you work as part of the next generation. You will always be responsible for more debt than the debt you were born into. I now know which music I wish to buy, because I go to the record store and I'm looking through the CDs and it says explicit lyrics. Yes, that's what I want to hear. I want to hear Eminem talk about F this, F that, F bomb. Oh God, everywhere. It created a music genre. The blowback, the pushback, it created a music genre, which people today still blame for the current state of social affairs. Explicit lyrics. That's the reason why we got a performer up on stage wearing a strap on. But a family friendly performance, yes. Explicit lyrics. Okay. Extremes breed extremes. The extreme that we're dealing with right now with the anti-abortion laws, the ban on abortions at 6 weeks to prevent a 10-year-old girl from getting an abortion, from a 27-year-old, because she's pregnant at 6 weeks, 3 days from a 27-year-old rapist. This creates pushback. This creates the extremes. This creates the rage that we have on the Capitol steps all across the United States. This is what says ban off our bodies, and why you have, women not dressed up in their Sunday best, but dressed up to look like corpses. Why you have people choosing to express themselves in the most negative, most offensive way. People who will indeed be offended. I know some of you have probably seen, the internet meme out there. You have that individual on the center line. And you're saying, well, both sides have good opinions. And then one side runs up and just pushes him. And there's the other side waiting to catch him, waiting to bring them into the fold. It's like, why are you siding with the bad guys now? The bad guys didn't try and beat me up. How do we bring the people in the middle? How do we create the welcome, the invitation? Not to see our rage, but to see our care, see our consideration, see our compassion. See the need for a moderated position. Or better yet, to understand why it's so critical that we get the state out of the decision-making process for us. We need to recognize our rage, and we need to dial it back, because we can't be extreme around the people who are neutral, because all that does is push them to the other side. I don't want you to be passive. That doesn't help. Find the arguments that work. Find the discussions that create compassion. Find the means to bridge, not to the extremists on the other side. It's too far away. It's a bridge too far. But to your neighbor, the one who isn't sure, the one who doesn't understand because they didn't live through the trauma, the one who doesn't understand because they never knew a 12-year-old girl that was getting molested. The ones that don't understand because they never heard the stories that were never told. Approximately 1 in 4 American women before the age of 21 are sexually assaulted. 90% of those are by somebody they knew. The reasons a lot of these stories don't get told is because they're afraid of embarrassing somebody they actually love. Because someone they loved didn't respect their boundaries or their bodily autonomy or their consent, or lack thereof. There's reasons these stories don't get told. Be kind to the people who don't understand. Yeah. 4, 5, and 8. Part of that 1 in 4. Someone close who was a family member. Nobody responds empathetically to being beaten on the head with uncomfortable conditions. Okay. Find the story. Don't beat them up. Find what they're comfortable with. Tell them what you know they can handle. Be part of that communication. Be part of that bridge. Be part of that development of empathy for a condition they don't understand. Okay. So enough of the Supreme Court, enough about getting out and doing your actions, doing your actionism, being able to be part of the demonstrations, being part of that communication method that gets out and lets your legislators know that what they've done isn't something that's acceptable. Be part of creating those scenes where they are uncomfortable because they have created situations that are untenable for people they can identify with because they've shown up in their Sunday best rather than their raggedy rags. It's a game, folks. It's a sad game. We shouldn't have to play it. Yet there we are. When you participate, play your part. Be your best self. Be your best. Be better than your best self. Because we aren't going to win by half-assing it. Get out, do the right thing. Find the people, organize. Be at the events. Show up. Dress up for the occasion. Be part of the crowd that supports the right message. Bodily autonomy for all. Okay, some of the other issues. We went over the 1010. We went over Supreme Court ruling. What's going on in the state of Idaho. Quick note. For those of you who are familiar with the pillow guy, The Family, Doug Coe's Religious in Washington Politics. Yeah, there's a good one. Anything that's a docudrama on the Duggars is another good one. The Kids, that one's, I believe it's a 90s flick. It's another one that's interesting about, subculture, altered culture, other things. There are a lot of good movies about abuse, street culture, culture in the United States, religious cultures and countercultures that have created cycles of abuse in the United States to continue to perpetuate, untenable situations, much like we've seen in Ohio. Don't be afraid to have difficult conversations with those people who are ready to have it. Appreciate those boundaries of people who aren't ready for those conversations yet. You don't win people over by beating them over the head with information they're not prepared to receive. Pillow Guy has decided that Idaho cheated. That somehow Janice McGean, our lieutenant governor, who was running for governor, who only got 27% of the vote in the state of Idaho, who lost out to our current governor, Brad Little, 53%. Okay. Brad got a majority. He got more than 50%. He got the 50% plus one. He gets the nomination, folks. Janice McGean didn't come close. Election integrity in the state of Idaho is beyond reproach. I know there's a lot of people that don't agree. But it's like when Pillow Man comes in and says there were counties that were affected by electronic means. We got 7 counties that still hand count those votes. And those 7 counties were some of the counties he named as having electronic interference. No, they didn't. They hand counted those votes before turning in the information. We got 7 counties like that in the state of Idaho, folks. Those 7 counties that hand counted all their votes from the get-go. No electronic counting mechanisms available. Yeah. So for those of you who are paying attention to Pillow Man running around saying certain, Trump-favored candidates didn't get a fair election, yeah, Pillow Man's barking up the wrong tree, especially when it comes to the state of Idaho. Election integrity, it's solid here. Our clerks are on the ball. They got it. Yeah, Josh got 12.5-year sentence. Right? Not enough. Not enough for what he did. Not enough for what he got caught doing. Not just what he did, what everybody knows he did, what they didn't bother prosecuting because they felt it was outside of, the current situation, outside of, you know, statute of limitations, just what they caught him doing. Absolutely. It should have been longer. And that's one of those things that we need to get around to when it comes to violence against people, when it comes to violence against children. Nigeria actually came up with, it's an interesting situation. Nigeria, their king just passed a law that said, rapists will be castrated. People who rape children will be put to death. Part of me wonders why we're so far behind on that right now. I mean, we have the means to identify the people who raped and got minors pregnant. Why are they not on death row all across the United States? Why are not we not seeing them properly prosecuted? What was the other topic I brought up? Food shortages, we're dealing with those. Those are going to continually be part of the news cycle for the near future. We are still seeing more destruction. We are seeing prices go up. Even Idaho's getting hit. Our local stores here. Yes, yes. Not nearly as many Nigerian princes emailing people these days, but there's still a few of them out there. Give me a moment. Let me figure out what that other topic was that I said I was going to mention something about. Give me time. Give me time. Give me time. Okay, there were the election claims. Oh, yes, and another one for those people in Idaho. Yeah, I don't know how many people are following Idaho politics, but there was a recent attempt by an Idaho politician, okay, to co-sponsor a bill that would defund conservation efforts across the United States. Okay, and since 1937 when this particular bill went into effect. Now, okay, this is essentially a luxury tax in one aspect. Reason why is because there is a 10% tax on guns, on ammunition, on fish and game wildlife tags, hunting guns, the guns you purchase specifically to go hunting, whether you're getting shotguns for going after ducks and geese, whether or not you're using specific rifles for hunting, elk, deer, being able to go out. Now, a lot of these, based on their classification, have specific kind of taxes on them. Okay, these taxes are used to support conservation efforts. They're used to support replanting of wildlands after, wildfires. Some of the funds are used to support wildfire, protection. Now, the particular taxes represent approximately, I think it was 15 billion over the last 20 years. And these taxes are paid by the people who go out and do the subsistence hunting. They go out and hunt the game. They go out and collect the game. So in a lot of ways, this is paying for a service. We call it a tax. We call it a fee. At the same time, you're paying for a service. If most of this land were privatized, somebody would be charging you to go out and do the hunting on your land. Now, this is particularly interesting because in addition to defunding conservation efforts by changing the way those conservation efforts are funded and removing taxes on certain items that are specifically associated with what those conservation efforts have done. Yeah, um, and that's part of what it is. Okay, the current tax is essentially a user fee that reflects the cost of the function, that reflects the cost of maintaining the public lands, national forests, where a lot of Idaho hunters continue to do their subsistence hunting, and in some cases, the special tags for their big game hunting. Okay. Now, thing is he wants to replace that user specific fee that's associated with items that deal specifically with things conservationists believe in. He's replacing the funding of conservation with a more general fee, making not the hunters and the conservationists and the hikers, the people who go to participate in the naturals, the ones responsible for the conservation efforts, that user fee that accurately reflects the cost of a function. He wants to reduce the amount of money that's spent in conservation and transfer the cost of maintaining that conservation across a broad spectrum of individuals, many of whom don't actually participate or enjoy what those funds are used towards. Okay. Now, it's interesting. A lot of arguments. There are an awful lot of people who are hunters, an awful lot of big game hunters, an awful lot of people who like wildlife conservation, who are perfectly happy to see somebody else pay the bill for those. That's essentially who he's catering to, while defunding the prospect and increasing the incentive to privatize the entire system. Okay, now I realize an awful lot of people are going, but Joe, you're a libertarian. Don't you want to privatize it all? I am an Idahoan, folks. And I do recognize the significant amount of public lands that we maintain in order for collective resources. We maintain them so people can hunt. We maintain them so people can recreate. I would say that, except we do have one of the oldest active nuclear plants in the United States. We actually talked about that. You know, right? What are we up to for Ukraine funding right now? Through the friggin' roof, through the friggin' roof. Um, oh yeah. Sorry, New York City. You guys are all doing bomb drills right now. It's going to be an interesting one. I might actually talk about that next week. Okay. In the meantime, I love you guys. Love you all. It's that time. I've been here an hour talking your ear off. Love you. Family, friends, community. As long as you got those three, you can make anything happen. Support your neighbors, support your friends. It's 3 Mile Island there, Sandy. Uh, we've had like what, 4 meltdowns out of all of the major nuclear reactors around the world. We had Fukushima, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, and, a couple others. Anyway, love you guys. Take care. See you next week.